My name is Hassan Iqraq. I represent Southern California Association of Governments, which is the planning agency for the 6 counties: Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Riverside, Ventura, and Interior.
So are we like preparing for the future of poor people? It feels to me like the government is planning for poverty. Long term, 30, 40, 50 years from now, they're planning for poverty.
It's called Beacon on the Hill. The very cool thing about this thing is that it's 33 stories tall, but it actually will make way for what we're hearing to be not just apartments for the general public, but low income as well. So one of the first actual developments we'll see in downtown that combine very different amounts of renters over the course of the next 4 years.
So concentrating growth in strategic locations in the city to strengthen the economic base, offer new housing opportunities, maximizing available and planned infrastructure, and fostering the development and use of transit and multimodal transportation. And these areas, as I mentioned, are downtown, Foothill Boulevard, the Southeast Quadrant, College Heights, Mountain Avenue, and along the Interstate 10 corridor and in the 9th Street industrial area. And all other areas of the city are remaining unchanged. And even these areas are really not, all of these areas are not changing. You can see in the maps, there's specific areas that are within these areas that are proposed for revitalization.
What you really want to do is you want to build on corridors and in the center in a slightly denser way, so you can keep 90% of your town the way it is. This is what's happening everywhere else in Southern California. This is what's happening everywhere else in Southern California. This is what's happening everywhere else in Southern California. We will have thought this out in depth.
Planning is not done to change the physical shape, form of the city or anything next week, next month, next year, or even next decade. The things we do in planning are for, well, long-range planning used to be called 20 years, still is called 20 years. In my book, now that I'm over 60, I see that real planning should take a 50-year look.
The state's already told you you have to put high density in the downtown in this area, am I correct?
No.
So the state's doing the zoning and the planning and not the city?
No.
Because once they get done with the center of the city, what's to stop them from replanning the surrounding community as well? What's to stop them from replanning the surrounding community as well?
Yeah, we took SCAG money.
Is the state doing this, or is this dictated by the state, or is this something that the city is?
This is dictated by your wishes and your commands. This is not dictated by the state. This is not dictated by any sort of legislative action coming from the top. The state projects a growth number, saying we're going to grow as a state by this many number of people, whatever that number is, by this year. Then the state decides, saying, how are we going to divvy this up? it uses the COGS, the regional, the Council of Government Agencies. In Southern California, we have a 19 community COG, which is the largest in the United States. It uses these COGS then to say, here are your numbers. So if the state has a number that is growing, it then takes that number and divvies it up statewide. COG gets its share. COG gives it out to its member communities, saying, you plan for this growth. And it's a give and take. The intent there is this, that no one community can say, we're built out, we want to be exclusive, we don't want any more growth. It allows you to use your land area that you have and work through a community planning process to identify where some of the growth is desirable and can be accommodated. Do you want to add to that? It's roughly an 8-year cycle. It's roughly an 8-year cycle that the CAG works.
So it's options, not mandates, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. They're going to assign a number, and then we've got to make sure that we have the capacity for that number, or we're liable for lawsuits. That's what it boils down to. So there is a state requirement.
See, we do the plan every 4 years because that changes every 4 years. Things change. So if you go back to 1990, there was no passenger rail in the region. Look at today, you have miles and miles of passenger rail. So that's why you redo the plan, because situations change.
Providing a range of types, densities, and unit sizes, and making sure that housing that is developed is of high quality. And meeting the needs of the housing needs of residents of all income levels. This is coming from the housing element as well. Maintaining low-density residential designations in the existing low-density residential areas, protecting historic residential neighborhoods, balancing commercial and residential development to reduce the number of residents that have to commute long distance for their shopping needs, balancing commercial and residential development to reduce the number of residents that have to commute long distance for their shopping needs. So like I said, we're trying to limit residential in some of the employment areas just to bring more employment to the city and help create that balance of jobs, housing, and commercial services. Providing complementary land uses. So within residential neighborhoods, for example, you could have within walking distance grocery stores, basic commercial services, parks, recreational fields, schools, to encourage people to walk, or to allow the opportunity for people to walk and bike should they so desire. And then along the major arterials such as Foothill Boulevard, providing opportunities for residential, commercial, and employment uses to occupy the same site with and ensuring high quality development at the same time. So the density-related policies in the specific focus areas that I was talking about, like Foothill, Southeast Quadrant, are to encourage the intensification of development in areas that are served by transit, to give people an access and availability to modes of travel other than the automobile, allowing for and encouraging development of higher density at mid-blocks along Foothill Boulevard, where you see residential now.
I may be white, I may not be low income, but the fact of the matter is that doesn't mean that everything has to be distributed equally and evenly, because there is such a thing as structural disinvestment and structural racism, and this is what this plan is trying to do. It's trying to contradict centuries of disinvestment.
Expand for me on the policy FA 1.2. Encourage intensification of development in areas that are served by transit and multimodal.
So currently you have your Metrolink station that comes into downtown.
Right.
By having density, by having more housing located near the station, not only does it support ridership of the train, but it allows people the option of walking and taking transit to work without having to drive, So that's kind of where we're targeting growth, is where they have the option to take transit, as opposed to in residential neighborhoods where if you have higher density development, people are still going to just drive, and it's going to create traffic impacts. So at least by focusing development near transit, you don't create the traffic impacts. You can have people, take the train, and encourage people to take the train, because then you reduce, automobile and improve air quality and all the effects associated with driving.
Thank you.
With respect to low-income housing, we did hear a comment that there was a concern that the plan is designed to promote low-income housing. And per state law, the city is required to offer density bonuses for the provision of affordable housing, and that's seen in every city. We do have that in our code now, and we will continue to have that. Per state law, the city is required to provide housing for residents of all income levels as well. Per state law, the city is required to provide housing for residents of all income levels as well. Per state law, the city is required to provide housing for residents of all income levels as well.
So Ms. Kimball, for the benefit of the audience, could you explain what it means by the city is required to offer density bonuses for the provisions of affordable housing?
So if a developer comes in and they provide housing for very low income residents, and income is based on the median household income for the county. So if they provide housing for low income residents, very low income residents, moderate income residents, they are given, if they provide housing for those types of residents, they are given a density bonus up to a maximum of 35 units per acre.
Maximum.
And that's a tiering, so they would have to provide like 20% affordable housing in order to achieve that 35 units per acre.
It feels to me like the government is planning for poverty.
If they only provide 5 units, then that gives them maybe, there's a tiering of how much density they're given, and it can add units to what's currently allowed by the base code.
And that's state law right now. That has nothing to do with this commission or the city, correct?
Right, and we just wanted to bring that up because that's a concern that we've been hearing.
Correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that when she said, 35 dwelling units, up to that amount, we're not talking about single family areas, we're talking about areas that are allowed for higher density, so that would be on top of those.
So it has to be.
We're not talking about citywide or.
It has to be for that, where that is zoned accordingly, correct?
Correct.
But the key here that I got in reviewing my notes is that it's state law that we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice.
It just feels like there's no local control. It feels like the mandates are coming from somewhere besides West Covina.
I don't understand.
Yeah, the state does assign a number of units to every city.
Right.
And so, for example, the city of Upland has to identify areas to provide upwards of 1,500 units for various ranges of income levels. And so we have to zone areas where these units could go. So some of those are multifamily housing, some of those, they're all in the commercial mixed use, commercial residential mixed use areas, or your higher density residential areas.
Vice Chair Belcher.
Thank you, Chair Short. But that doesn't mean that developers are knocking on our doors to do this, does it?
No.
Because of the cost of land, right?
Right.
It has a lot to do with the cost of building.
The city has to incentivize it, and that's why there's a density bonus, because it's hard to get density, it's hard to get low-income housing into cities. And so in order to attract that, because we have to provide and we want to provide units for all income levels, we provide density bonuses.
And the real reason is the cost of land would be a major hurdle for any developer, correct?
Especially without redevelopment.
Right, without redevelopment, the cost of land in Upland and cost of land in the West End is prohibitive, basically. That's what we're seeing, right? That's why they're not coming knocking on our doors to do this, are they? It's just not cost effective.
One of the reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I already listed this policy, but the reason is to provide a range of housing types and densities for that meet housing needs of residents of all income levels. With respect to public transportation, there is a concern that the city is trying to force people to use public transportation. There is a concern that the city is trying to force people to use public transportation. There is a concern that the city is trying to force people to use public transportation. To give people an access and availability to modes of travel other than the automobile, balancing commercial and residential development to reduce the number of residents that have to commute long distance for their shopping needs. And we just want to clarify that active transportation policies are similar to what is contained in the existing general plan. So right now, the existing general plan has policies to provide streets that are safe for bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. And the city has a bicycle master plan. It has had one since 1995. And the city was an active participant in the San Bernardino Council of Sandbags Regional Bicycle Plan, which was completed in 2011 and recently updated in 2014. And the city is not closing Foothill Boulevard and simply recommending that the city consider closing the service roads to provide a consistent look and feel along Foothill, primarily for safety reasons, because it's confusing to drivers who encounter a service road and then it goes away and then it comes back, and it causes confusion, and that's something we've been hearing that we need to establish a policy to address that.
So what is the city's plan to put in the place of the service road? So what is the city's plan to put in the place of the service road?
I'll let our transportation consultant answer that. We have various alternatives that we've provided in the general plan. Just to show kind of our vision, what we've heard from the community.
Wait, she said our vision.
I say our vision, meaning the community of Upland, to concentrate.
No, it's your vision. It's your vision. You just said our vision.
Please.
In a great nation like ours, you can't let people do what they want. It has to be coordinated. In a great nation like ours, you can't let people do what they want. It has to be coordinated.